just going to jump in there because I mean, when you were talking about how you became an anthropologist, you used the Red Queen conversation there. How you got to train yourself to jump into this other world where you do have to believe in possibilities. And I guess my question is, how far do you actually believe the things? And because I suppose it's the tension between belief and suspension of belief. And I guess I'm wondering when, for instance, you're talking about the amazing magical phenomenon that you met with the Nagas, for instance, when you were there. When you suspended your belief, did that mean you neither believed nor didn't not believe? Or I mean, I guess I'm just wanting to know what's actually going on there. Is it because I think that's something that's always intrigued me and kind of troubled me a bit, really, about I can see the attraction of having, if you like, compartmentalizing things, which is what you're talk about at some points, where you hold on to your rationality, you hold on to, like you say, the 3,000 years of Greek and everything, you know, of the Anglosphere and all that stuff that holds that civilization together. You kind of hold on to that at the same time as bringing in the magical worlds. And I'm just wondering, how do you see that relationship working? Do you suspend everything now as an anthropologist, as an individual, as you know, Alan McFarlane sitting in your vast library there? Are you less rational or addicted to the Enlightenment vision, if you like, or the Greek vision than you used to be? Or is it that you're still there, you're still very much rooted in that, but you've got these additions now that somehow you can visit, but it's not got the same sort of resonance?
Well, both times in which you put that question, you use suspending belief. The actual statement is suspension, the willing, this is a definition of poetry, the willing suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
And that is different.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you suspend a part of judgmental activities. It's like the suspended judgment, which I've talked about as being a great invention. So what you do is you don't say you believe you've stopped believing something. You suspend your critical disbelief. And it's not different from many things you have to do as a participant observer fieldwork. For example, you suspend your Western eating habits. You know, when I'm in England, I eat fish and chips and the rest. When I'm in the village, I eat rice. Now, I'm willingly suspending my Western eating habits to eat as they do, and the same with clothing, same with, an infinite number of things which you forego. You don't abandon them, and when you come back, you go back into them. But for the time being, it would be ridiculous to say to them, I want fish and chips, because they don't have it. So basically, that's what you do. And once you realize it's just like, for example, it's just like a game, it is compartmentalized, because when you go on to, say, a football field, you willingly suspend all sorts of other aspects of your life. You know, if some young person came up to you and whizzed past you in the football field and you shouted at them, you can't do that, I'm a professor at Cambridge University, I am a higher status person and you can't get past me with your football. They'd say, well, maybe, but this is a game of football and that's irrelevant. So we all learn, and children learn to do it, as we've discussed, in games. We do it as soon as we read all of the things I've talked about as Western forms of magic, like reading a book. So we apply that, as was the original definition, to poetry, to art. You don't actually, when you look at a painting, you don't believe that painting is whatever you've painted. But you half believe it. You both believe and disbelieve, and that's what you do in fieldwork. So you suspend your Western morality or whatever it is, and your Western categories for that time.
But
Now,
is it your just to interject there? Is it your contention as well that I guess there's a kind of prejudice that sometimes attaches itself to this, where the thought is, because you're part of the Western civilization, you can do the suspension of disbelief, but it doesn't work the other way around. Now, is it your contention that actually, when you go into these other societies, they can do the same? They can.
yes. I mean, they can both do it and do it all the time within their own society. I mean, there are anthropologists have documented the fact that in many of these societies, there are many people who are as critical and agnostic or atheistic as we are. You know, you can, in many societies, you can come out of some Hindu puja and you say to the person, you know, you did all that and you sacrificed a goat and so on, and what do you think about it? And they'll say, oh, it's all nonsense, of course. I don't believe a word of it, but, you know, my wife wanted me to do it, so I went along and did it. And, you know, who knows, it might be do me good. So they're doing it all the time in their own world. And certainly when they come here, I mean, one of the things that surprised me talking to my young Gurung friends and interviewing them when they came here, I said to them, you know, you believed in witchcraft in the village. You've now been living in England for 10 years. You've got a good job in a Western bank. You were well educated in Nepal. You did sciences, biology, and so on and so on. Here you are living in Burnt Oak in North London. Do you still believe in witchcraft? And they say, of course I do, Alan. And then I say, and then I say, how's your mother? And, oh, well, she went to hospital recently. I say, well, you know, why didn't you cure her of witchcraft? Oh, well, you know, hospital is one thing, witchcraft's another thing. So human beings are pretty good at keeping inconsistent thought systems or in balance. So I think the ultimate question you might ask me is, if someone said, Alan, if you have to choose in a binary way, do you believe that those spirits came down, the man's ancestors reappeared and were in the roof and Sarah saw them? It's either you have to choose, do you believe that or don't you believe that? And if you don't choose, I'll shoot you. Then I'd say, I don't believe it. But only, I mean, I would wriggle as long as I could, because ultimately, I don't think we have to think in that binary way.
Yeah. And I guess this is the secret to what you're saying about how we can make mistakes about when we look at Japan and we look at China, we see them as modern because what they've been able to do is build hospitals, cars, and everything, but still have magic, still have their old kind of joined up civilization.
Absolutely, but I mean, it surprises me less and less. I mean, when I look at the mumbo jumbo, I hope this won't cause a flurry of hate mail, but the mumbo jumbo that goes into Christian fundamentalism in many parts of the world, not least in America, I mean, the kind of rubbish. I have friends and former pupils, for example, who are rapturists. Now, if you looked at rapturism, I mean, PhDs in anthropology from Cambridge, etc., and yet they write books on how the rapture is true. Now, the rapture is about, to my mind, just as ridiculous and unprovable, shall we say at the least, as beliefs in spirits in a Nepalese village. I mean, what more foundation has it got than that? So we do it all the time and most people go around with a whole lot of nonsense in their heads, including me.